you to launch your new business.
I'm not selling fitness, I'm selling feelings.
Marnie might be a boxer, but I'm a fighter.
Now it's crunch time.
You are going to be my business partner.
The Apprentice, the final, Thursday at 9 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Now on BBC One, the lunchtime news with Ben Brown.
Today at 1, China's president is on a state visit to Moscow, with Russia hoping for Chinese support in the war in Ukraine. President Xi Jinping will be the first foreign leader to meet Vladimir Putin since a warrant was issued for the Russian leader's arrest on war crimes charges. Well, we'll be live in Moscow for the very latest, also this lunchtime. As the Alps lose their ice, UN scientists release their most comprehensive assessment so far on the impact of climate change on our planet.
This report is a clarion call to massively fast-track climate efforts by every country and every sector and on every time frame.
Turbulence on the markets after the rescue of the troubled bank Credit Suisse. It's revealed almost 400 hotels across the UK are now being used to house asylum seekers at a cost of £6 million a day. And why something fishy has been going on after the body of a rare shark was discovered on a beach in Hampshire.
On BBC London, people in Essex say they've become prisoners in their own homes due to a toxic landfill site nearby. They now say they can't even open their windows.
Hello, good afternoon. For the increasingly isolated Russian leader Vladimir Putin, it is a hugely significant moment today. The Chinese leader Xi Jinping has travelled to Moscow to meet him. President Xi says today's state visit will give new momentum for relations between the two superpowers. Well, President Xi will be the first foreign leader to shake Vladimir Putin's hand since an international arrest warrant was issued for the Russian leader on war crimes charges. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, reports now from Moscow.
When Xi Jinping arrived, you could tell the Russians were pleased to see him. Full military honours for one of the world's most powerful leaders. But this was pomp with a purpose. Russia knows it needs China more than ever. Putin and Xi have met many times before, but never before has Russia's president been under such pressure. His war in Ukraine has not been going to plan. And last week in The Hague, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for alleged war crimes. Xi's visit is a show of support. The two leaders have been building what they call a no-limits partnership. It's not an equal one, though. Russia, under heavy international sanctions, is increasingly dependent on China as a market for its goods and raw materials. As for no limits, well, there have been some. Up till now, Beijing's been reluctant to provide Russia with lethal aid for the Ukraine war, to avoid secondary sanctions against Chinese companies. Still, China is thought to be supplying dual-use technology, like semiconductor chips, vitally important to the Russian military. Ahead of the summit, President Putin went travelling himself, paying his first visit to territory occupied by Russia in its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. He toured Mariupol, a city that had been heavily damaged by Russian shelling. His presence sent a clear message to Ukraine and to the West. This Kremlin leader is not about to compromise.
Well, Steve joins us live now from Moscow. And Steve, as you said in your report there, President Putin under renewed international pressure, really, especially after those war crimes charges. So particularly keen to welcome the Chinese president today to Moscow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of points to make here. These two men have a lot in common, right? They have a very similar worldview. They're both authoritarian leaders. They both embrace the idea of a multipolar world, as they call it, standing up to US domination. Vladimir Putin quite likes the idea of standing back to back with China against the collective West, as he calls it. There's another more practical point to make. If you have burnt your bridges with the West, as Vladimir Putin has done, then what do? You've got no choice, really. You tilt to the east, and that is what the Russian president has done. The events of the last year have accelerated Russia's dependency on China, on Chinese markets, and China says, bring it on. You know, this gives China more clout in negotiations with Russia. It gives China more influence in Russia. It means China can buy Russian energy at a discount. What you get is a partnership, but not a partnership of equals. China is very much the senior partner here, Russia the junior partner.
Steve, many thanks. Steve Rosenberg, our Russia editor, live in Moscow. In the last few minutes, scientists have published their most comprehensive study yet into the effects of climate change. The report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change summarises almost a decade of evidence about global warming. It is likely to become a benchmark for governments around the world as they try to address the growing threat to our planet. Well, our climate editor, Justin Rolat, is in Interlaken in Switzerland. Justin, just assess for us the significance of this report.
Well, this report is completely crucial. As you say, it'll form the basis of future negotiations between governments. The press conference releasing that document has just started in this building behind me. It's why it's so quiet out here. It draws together, as you say, 8 years of scientific research in a form which governments have signed off and means it will be used as the basis of negotiations, the basic text for the talks that happen every year, the global talks that happen on climate, which is why this is such a crucial document.
Rescue dogs tried to sniff out the bodies of the more than 250 people who are reckoned to have died after a tropical storm ripped through Malawi this week. Storm Freddy is likely to be the longest-lasting tropical cyclone on record, say meteorologists. Today's report says climate change is likely to intensify tropical storms like this yet further. But all hope is not lost, said the UN chief today.
The 1.5-degree limit is achievable, but it will take a quantum leap in climate action. This report is a clarion call to massively fast-track climate efforts by every country and every sector and on every time frame.
The alpine glaciers of Europe lost 6% of their volume last year alone. To bring climate change under control, the UN boss says we need action on all fronts. Everything, everywhere, all at once, he says. At this weather station in the Alps, they've been collecting climate records for decades. Today's report warns that we will almost certainly bust through the 1.5-degree boundary that avoids the worst impacts of climate change in the next few years. Low-carbon technologies, electric vehicles like this, as well as renewable power, will be essential to cut greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels. But we will also need technologies like this plant in Iceland that can draw carbon dioxide from the air, the scientists said today. These are at an early stage of development and are still very expensive, they warn. It is another sobering reminder of the huge challenges the world faces if it's to meet the climate challenge.
But listen, buried in the report, there is some good news. The scientists say that the cost of many renewable technologies, wind, solar, batteries, has fallen dramatically. It's being implemented very rapidly. That's good news. It also says there are changes we can all make, small changes, walking and cycling more, eating less meat, which make us healthier and also will reduce our emissions.
OK, Justin, thank you very much. Justin Rolat there, our climate editor in Interlaken in Switzerland. European banking shares fell sharply this morning before then rebounding after the emergency takeover of Credit Suisse. The Swiss bank was sold to its rival UBS yesterday in a government-backed deal designed to prevent any further turmoil. Well, the Bank of England has said banks are safe, but in London, the FTSE index of leading shares fell by around 1% in early trading before recovering. Here's our business correspondent, Thea Leggett.
Grim-faced and determined, top officials from Switzerland's central bank arriving for weekend talks that led to the shotgun wedding of the country's two biggest banks. At a hurried press conference, it was announced that Credit Suisse was to be acquired by its bitter rival UBS, the latest victim of a sudden crisis of confidence in the banking sector.
The bankruptcy of a global systematically important bank would have caused irreparable economic turmoil in Switzerland and throughout the world. For this reason, Switzerland had to take the responsibilities beyond its own borders.
Credit Suisse has been battered by scandals and it's been losing billions of pounds a year. But even so, it was not expected to get into so much trouble so quickly. And that's the problem the banking sector is now facing, a loss of confidence. Because if people aren't confident their money is safe in a bank, they'll go and withdraw it. And that can rapidly create serious concerns. The demise of Credit Suisse was triggered by the collapse last week of two American lenders, which sent shivers through the industry. Now the Bank of England and 5 other central banks have taken coordinated action to ensure banks have access to a steady supply of cash. But concerns that other lenders could get into trouble and create a 2008-style banking crisis haven't gone away.
This should not be 2008. 2008 was a common problem to the banking system. Bad assets that virtually everybody owned. This started out as isolated problems. The policy response is turning it into something more systematic.
So, should banking customers here be worried? Analysts say for most people, there's no cause for concern just yet.
If you've got savings in an account with a bank that has got a banking licence, up to £85,000 per account is guaranteed by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, and for joint accounts up to £170,000.
11,000 people work at Credit Suisse and UBS here in the UK, and amid all the turmoil, their future is very much up in the air. Theo Leggett, BBC News.
Almost 400 hotels across the UK are now being used by the government to house more than 50,000 asylum seekers. Seaside resorts, airports and even retirement villages are among the locations that are being used as part of a Home Office scheme, which is costing more than £6 million every day. Our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford has this report.
Welcome to the Wiltshire, a hotel, golf course and retirement village set in rolling hills near Royal Wootton Bassett, home to more than 100 mostly older residents, now also home to more than 80 asylum seekers who moved in December. The Leisure Village residents pay to access the hotel's pool, gym and golf course, but have had to enter by the back door since the asylum seekers moved in. Down in the village, I found resident and former TV presenter Christopher Morris, now 84 years old and quietly fuming.
We find it difficult now to access the facilities. We can't go in the front door, it's locked. There are security men shooing us away. We have to go around the back, and the facilities are much more reduced. People don't bother to go there anymore.
The retired residents are unnerved by the arrival of lots of young men who mill around at night. But they're not the only ones who say the hotel is completely unsuitable for asylum seekers. I found 25-year-old Simpay from Sudan heading to catch a bus to Swindon. He's been in the hotel for 3 months and says its isolated location means there's no way of learning about British society.
There is nothing to do here, actually, nothing. We stay the whole day at the room doing nothing.
What do you do?
Nothing. Actually, we started getting depressed. I've been talking with them to see some therapists.
The Home Office has rented hundreds of hotels to house tens of thousands of asylum seekers, but few can be as strangely located as this, wedged as it is between a retirement village and a golf course. To provide beds for more than 51,000 asylum seekers and rising, the Home Office has booked out hotels in seaside resorts and cities, in villages and the countryside, at airports and on golf courses, anywhere they can find willing hotel owners. There are 395 hotels in all, 363 in England and 20 in Northern Ireland, but far fewer in the other 2 nations, 10 in Scotland and only 2 in Wales. The Leicestershire village of Kegworth is one of the latest places to have the local hotel's business model changed overnight to housing asylum seekers. Yew Tree Lodge was the local wedding venue, swimming pool and gym, as well as bringing in business from the nearby East Midlands Airport. But that all changed last month. Frederica Reynolds used to do all the flowers for the weddings, but in an instant, that key part of her business was snatched away.
They rang me on the Thursday before the asylum seekers came on the Monday and cancelled all my weddings for the foreseeable. That's a huge amount of work and income to me.
And she told me it's not just the loss of thousands of pounds.
Me and my boys used to go swimming every Saturday there. I've got two little ones, and every time we drive past there, they want to go swimming, and unfortunately that's closed now.
Because of the small boats crossing the channel, the number of asylum seekers in hotels has gone from 3,000 to 51,000 in just 3 years. It's the government policy that almost no one is in favour of, not even the government, and it's costing the taxpayer £6 million a day.
Well, Daniel joins me now. As you say there at the end of your report, not even the government think this is a good idea.
The Home Office hate it, and the government is really, really keen to stop putting people into hotels. But the problem is the solutions that they've got to try and stop it are going to be quite long term. First of all, there's the quite controversial policies about sending asylum seekers to Rwanda and putting people in detention centres and then returning them back to their point of departure. That's still going through the House of Commons. There's a policy to clamp down on the backlog of asylum seekers, but that's something that's going to take some time. And meantime, people are still arriving. We've had another 2,500 people come across the channel just in 2023. So there's a lot of pressure building. So as much as the government hates doing this, they're going to be opening more hotels over the next few weeks.
Daniel, thank you very much. Daniel Sanford, our Home Affairs correspondent. The time is just 16 minutes past 1. Our top story this lunchtime. China's President Xi Jinping is on a state visit to Moscow today, with Russia hoping for Chinese support in the war in Ukraine. And still to come.
And I'm in Epping Forest cooking with the Scouts, of course, an organisation which relies upon volunteers and, like many others, is hoping for a coronation boost to numbers.
And on BBC London, we head to Surrey to find out more about a historic gardening laboratory that helped the country recover from World War II. And Elizabeth has your full week's weather forecast, all here in 15 minutes.
It's 20 years today since the ground invasion of Iraq began. US and British forces led the attack, which led to the toppling of Saddam Hussein's regime. Well, the violent chaos that followed and the failure to plan for the aftermath of that invasion eventually led to the rise of so-called Islamic State. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, who's been in the northern city of Mosul, looks now at what the invasion 20 years ago has meant for Iraq and for the world.
A lot of the old city of Mosul hasn't been rebuilt yet. It was destroyed in 2017 during the war to eradicate the jihadists of the Caliphate of Islamic State. It was really nasty, house-to-house fighting. And it went on for months. I was here at the time, and a lot of civilians, as well as fighters, were killed. The rise and fall of Islamic State, also known as ISIS, was part of an unfolding catastrophe that engulfed Iraq and was felt right across the Middle East. Now, a lot of it goes back to March 2003. That was when the Americans and the British and their allies invaded Iraq. The Americans called the massive air raids with which they opened the war shock and awe. They claimed, wrongly, that this was the way to make the Middle East safer for everyone. Within weeks, they'd removed the Iraqi dictator, Saddam Hussein. Another false claim was that he had weapons of mass destruction. The US Navy flew President George W. Bush out to an aircraft carrier where he declared victory.
The tyrant has fallen and Iraq is free.
He could not have been more wrong. The Americans hadn't worked out how they were going to replace Saddam Hussein's regime. In the end, they imposed a system that turned sectarian and ethnic groups against each other. In the years of chaos and violence that followed, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis were killed. No one knows how many exactly, as armed groups fought each other, fought the Americans, and killed each other's civilians. Much of Mosul and other cities has been rebuilt. There are bright spots. As for the West, the Americans and the British, the invaders, a lot of the world just laughs when they talk about peace or international law because of what happened here. But what matters most is the effect on the lives of millions of people, not just in Iraq, but across the wider Middle East, who suffered and died because of the invasion and its consequences. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Mosul.
Well, here in the UK, the Defence Minister, Alex Chalk, has laid a wreath at the Basra Memorial Wall at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire. In marking the 20th anniversary of the Iraq War, he honoured the memory of the 179 British personnel who lost their lives in the conflict. In the last few minutes, we've heard that Northern Ireland's Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, will vote against the government's new Brexit plans, the Windsor Framework, in Parliament on Wednesday, although the party's leader, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, has said he'll continue to work with the government to address what he calls outstanding issues. Let's get more on this now with our chief political correspondent, Nick Eardley, who's at Westminster. Nick, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has invested a lot of political capital in this framework. How big a blow would it be if the DUP do vote against?
He has indeed, Ben, and I think it's undoubtedly a setback for the Prime Minister that the DUP are going to oppose the bit of the deal we know that MPs will definitely get a vote on this week. That statement that's dropped from the DUP's leader in the last half hour or so, saying that it's clear that the deal doesn't deal, or the agreement doesn't deal with some of the fundamental issues that the DUP has. It does say that they're prepared to work with the Prime Minister to make changes, but to be honest, it's not clear that any changes will be possible, because it took months of negotiation between the UK and the European Union to get the Windsor Framework. I'm not so sure that Brussels will want to revisit it. So where does this leave the Prime Minister? Well, one of the groups he was seeking to win over, the Unionists in Northern Ireland, are going to vote against. We expect to hear the verdict of Tory Brexiteers tomorrow afternoon. They've been studying the legal text and they're preparing to give their verdict on it. So it's quite possible there could be some Conservative MPs who fail to back this deal as well. It will pass Parliament because we expect the majority of Conservative MPs to vote for it with the backing of Labour. So this isn't a question of whether it gets through Parliament, but it does create potentially a bit of a headache for Rishi Sunak, that some of the groups that he thought were coming on side still have some significant issues. And it does mean that he's facing the prospect of quite a few of his own MPs and the DUP voting against them in a couple of days' time.
Nick, many thanks. Nick Eardley reporting. Walkers on a beach in Hampshire have made an exciting discovery. The body of what's been described as an exceptionally rare kind of shark, believed to have been a small-toothed sand tiger. But the TV historian Dan Snow, who was there at the time, says that before the body could be recovered by biologists for further study, trophy hunters removed its head and its tail. Well, he's now appealing for those body parts to be returned in the interests of science, as Bryony Leyland now reports.
It is a shark, so be careful. An unexpected visitor to the south coast in trouble. When a shark was spotted thrashing about in the shallows at Leap Beach, locals went to help. Come on, mister. The rescue mission seemed to have been a success.
Yes. Yes.
But yesterday, the shark, believed to be a small-toothed sand tiger, rarely seen in UK waters, was found washed up. Historian and local resident Dan Snow tweeted about the discovery, and scientists urged him to salvage the shark. But he and a team of volunteers were too late. The head, fin and tail had been cut off.
We are desperate to try and get hold of that head because there's things like isotopic analysis. You can see where it's been, what it's eaten, what it's. If you have its brain, we can tell lots from its brain. So we would love to get hold of it. There's no judgment, but if we can just have it back, just to do some science on it, and then the person can have it back again. They can keep it.
Scientists want to know more about why the shark, which by the way wouldn't present a threat to people, was in the Solent at all.
If this is or was a small-toothed sand tiger, then they're often found more in the Atlantic, more around the Bay of Biscay. And as we see changes in climate change, ocean currents, we are seeing changes in distributions of species around the world, but also around our British waters as well.
The hope is the head may yet be returned, so the full story of the shark and why it came to the Solent can be told. Bryony Leyland, BBC News.
Now, to celebrate the coronation of King Charles, hundreds of charities are offering people the chance to volunteer during the bank holiday weekend in May. Our royal correspondent, Sarah Campbell, is in Epping Forest and can tell us more about how people can take part in what is called the Big Help Out initiative. Sarah.
Yeah, hi Ben. So we're at the Scout headquarters. This is where volunteer leaders come and get trained today. As you can see, we've got a group of them learning cookery skills. I have learned that if you don't have a frying pan around your campfire, but you need to cook an egg, in that foil there is eggs inside an orange. You can use that instead of a pan. Now, Scouts rely on volunteers, as do many other organisations. Numbers are down. And so what they want is more people. And that's what the Big Help Out is all about, a coronation boost. Across the UK, there is an army of volunteers giving up their time and sharing their talents and expertise to the benefit of all.
I'm Jane. I've been involved in Scouting for 23 years now. It's the satisfaction element, I think, of seeing them enjoy themselves and being part of it. It's like being one part of a big family, really.
My name is Ian. I've been volunteering at London Zoo for nearly 7 years. My background, I was a public sector accountant, so something completely different to what I'm doing here. It's just wonderful to get such new experiences, meet many new people, make many hundreds of new friends.
I'm Preeti and I volunteer for the Royal Voluntary Service. I've been volunteering because I love being around people. It gives me a sense of belonging to the community and it makes me happy.
At the last count, there were 7 million people in England alone who volunteered at least once a month. Sounds a lot, but that's about a third down on pre-pandemic levels. And it's at a time when the most vulnerable really need the support volunteers so generously give. This charity, Little Village, provides free toys, clothes and baby equipment.
We're expecting to support 2,000 more children this year than we did last year. And for us to be able to do that, we need to have volunteers on sites to be able to help. So come and help.
And that's the idea behind the Big Help Out, the National Day of Volunteering planned as part of the Coronation Weekend in May.
Download the app, the Big Help Out app. Find those opportunities, find out what your passion is and how you can make a difference to your community, and then select the opportunity that's right for you.
And although it's about May the 8th initially, what you really want is people to discover it, love it, carry on volunteering.
That's right, it's more than one day.
Cheers, take care, Hannah. There will be thousands of charities and organisations looking for new helpers.
Lots of Sex in the City again.
Oh, excellent. Right. Oh. People like husband and wife team Carol and Andy, who spend a few hours a week in their local Age UK shop.
It's good fun and we have a laugh and a giggle about the things that have gone on in the shop today. Yeah, we enjoy it. We like each other's company and that's good fun for us. Keeps us young.
This is Suzanne. She spends her evenings rescuing wildlife as an RSPCA volunteer.
For my normal day job, it's very much sat down, it's very much behind a desk. So it's something that's that real hands-on helping animals and really rewarding for seeing the difference that you're making.
It is a simple message. Get involved over the coronation weekend however you can and find out where your help might be needed using the new app. And big thanks to the first Austerley Beaver Scouts for their excellent sign making. Well done. Matt Hyde is the Chief Exec of the Scouts. Tell us about the big help out. Not all of the organisations are on there just yet, but it's going to be by the time of May the 8th, there will be hopefully thousands.
That's right. We're looking for a huge boost in volunteering across the country. We're saying to people, volunteering is good for society, it's good for these organisations, and it's good for you as well. So we want you to go and download the app, go to thebighelpout.org.uk. There are opportunities now, but there'll be more and more opportunities between now and the 8th of May. So download the app, go to the website, get involved. If you're an organisation, get involved. And if you're a business, we want businesses involved as well. Think about this as a great opportunity for your staff to promote incredible HR policies, flexible working, because businesses as well can make such a difference to our communities.
Lovely, thanks very much, Matt. And this is very much seen as a legacy project for the coronation, so they want people to get involved on May the 8th, but then to carry on volunteering. Once again, that app, the Big Help Out app. Back to you.
All right, Sarah, thank you very much indeed. Now, in the last few minutes, we've just heard that members of the RMT Rail Union have voted to accept a pay offer from Network Rail. It's said to be worth up to 14% for their lowest paid workers. The union represents signallers and maintenance staff on the railways. RMT members who work for the 14 train operating companies are still due to go on strike, but this vote today is being seen as a breakthrough. We'll have more on that on the News Channel and BBC News at 6. Now, let's get an update on the latest weather forecast for you. Ben Rich is here. Hi, Ben.
Hello, Ben. Thank you. Good afternoon. Today is the spring equinox, the beginning of the astronomical spring, and certainly we've been feeling the days getting longer. The sunrise this morning in the east of England was just before 6 o'clock, and the sun won't set in parts of Northern Ireland until nearly 6:45 this evening. But you may not get to see too many sunrises and sunsets this week because the jet stream, the winds high up in the atmosphere, is blowing strongly across the Atlantic, feeding what is essentially a conveyor belt of weather systems in our direction. It will often be cloudy and there will be quite a lot of rain. This is the rain we're expecting to accumulate through the next 5 days and over the hills of, say, Cumbria, parts of Wales, southwest England, where we could potentially see 100 millimetres of rain piling up. So pretty soggy week in prospect. And this afternoon we've got one band of rain drifting northeastwards across Scotland, although some bright skies in the far north. More heavy rain getting back into Northern Ireland, Wales, the southwest later on, and there will be 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but really mild. 8 degrees for Aberdeen, perhaps 15 in Norwich. And then as we head through this evening and tonight, well, we'll see this band of heavy rain working its way eastwards. There will be some showers elsewhere, generally quite a lot of cloud, but I think we'll see a few more clear breaks getting into the west later in the night. The breeze strengthening, but really mild, 5 to 10 degrees as we start tomorrow morning. Tomorrow will bring some heavy rain across the Northern Isles, that rain continuing across Shetland for a good part of the day. Elsewhere, some spells of sunshine, but some showers as well, some of which will be heavy and thundery. And then here's our next weather system in the conveyor belt, another band of rain getting into Northern Ireland. But look at those temperatures, widely 12 to 15 degrees. So there goes that weather system through Tuesday night into Wednesday. Some heavy rain with that. Behind it, plenty of showers running in on what will be quite a brisk and quite gusty southwesterly wind. A band of rain pushing across the Northern Isles. Then we're back to sunny spells and showers, some hail and some thunder in the showers. Gusty winds around some of these western coasts. We could well see gusts of around 50 miles per hour. But still a very mild feel to the weather with temperatures for most of us between 9 and 14 degrees. And it will stay mild, generally speaking, for the end of the week, perhaps eventually a little bit cooler in the far north of the UK. It will often be windy and there will be yet more rain at times. Ben.
Thank you very much indeed. And that is all from the BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One now, we'll join the BBC's news teams where you are. Do have a very good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. This is BBC London with me, Frankie McCamley. People living in a part of Essex say they've become prisoners in their own homes due to a toxic landfill that's burnt on and off for 20 years. The London Fire Brigade was called to the site in Launders Lane in Rainham over 100 times in 9 months last year. Some say it's so bad they can't open their windows, as Barry Caffrey explains.
People living in the shadow of these toxic fumes fear the air they're breathing in is poisoning them. This site in Rainham, previously a legal landfill for 20 years, has been catching fire.
The smell is like proper wrong.
You've got the original polluter, who we know who they are,